And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to an Erudite Adventure. This is the first time I'm ever doing a live stream. Well, no, not a live stream, a live stream interview with an author. And I reached out to my friend Bren, or Callie, because I know her, and she said that she would be willing to be my guinea pig for this. So we're just gonna ask some questions about her writing journey, her new book that she just published, and we will see how this goes. If anybody has any questions or anything, please feel free to ask them, and we'll try and get to them when we can. Yeah, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah. So my name's Callie, and I am a debut author. So this will be my debut book, and I have it right here. It's called "What If We Met in a Bookstore." So it's very cozy YA fantasy, just perfect for fall time. I've been writing for a long time, but this is my first book that I've actually gotten up for sale, and I'm really excited to just talk about it. And this is my first interview, so it's gonna be a crash course here.
All right, that's good. All right, so we mentioned that you're a writer, and we mentioned that we've known each other for a while. Part of why I was so willing to reach out to you is because you are part of the AEA team here. You're what we call our social media manager, and so you do all the stuff on Instagram for us because we don't have any other social medias, which has been really helpful because I know nothing about that. Kate doesn't have time to do ours and her own personal, and so it's been really helpful and beneficial to have somebody who can keep up with that a little bit better than I can. So you mentioned that your book is titled "What If We Met in a Bookstore," which is why I titled the title of this live stream "What If We Met a New Author," because Callie here is a new author, and so we're going to talk about your book and your writing journey. I didn't go through my list of questions and order them in any good order, so we're just going to see which one comes first. What made you decide that this would be your debut book?
So that's a good question. This was not planned to be my debut book, actually. I was writing a completely different series, a King Arthur series that will hopefully be published in the future. I wrote the first 2 books thinking these are the books that I'm going to publish first. And then just life stuff happened, and it was just going to take a lot longer to finish than I had anticipated. And I was going to pursue trad publishing with those 3, and that was the traditional publishing journey right now is a dumpster fire. So I just stepped back from that and decided, you know what, I'm just going to learn how to self-publish a book, just learn how the process works, and I'm just going to write something that I really enjoy writing, and it's just going to be entirely an experiment. I actually didn't even intend to publish this one off the bat. I was putting it up for free on my Substack as just like we're releasing chapters once at a time, and people started to really like it, and I was like, they were saying I should publish it, and I was like, okay, I guess. So I just kind of went with it, and it was very fast turnaround, I think, from when I wrote it to when I published it. And for me, the process went fairly smoothly, but I know most of the time it doesn't for other people. But I
Yeah,
got to learn how to self-publish this one, so it was entirely not planned, but it worked out really, really well.
that's cool. That's good. Is there any challenges that you specifically noticed within the self-publishing realm that you were not expecting?
Yes, there are a few things, and one was like, okay, which platform do I want to choose to pick to publish it? Because there's quite a
Mm-hmm.
few out there, and they all
Yeah.
have pros and cons. Amazon being one that your book, most people buy their books on Amazon, so having it there is ideal, but their quality isn't as great, and
Mm-hmm.
the the quality of the books aren't as great, and I just find there's a lot of glitches that are happening with Amazon, and a lot of authors' accounts are getting deleted, and they're just being treated fairly poorly, and I was like, "You know what? Maybe I'll just sit back and see what happens with everyone's Amazon before I go there. So I chose Ingram Spark. They have terrible customer service. Terrible customer service, but their quality is really great. I'm really impressed with just the quality of their paper and the binding and everything. So that was a challenge, just figuring out which one would be the best for me at the time.
Yeah.
I'm open to picking other places, but Ingram Spark has a really big distribution thing. I don't have to make accounts at all these different like Barnes and Noble, Amazon. They do it for you. They just put it up there. So you just submit it and it's worldwide. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
available everywhere.
That's good. Yeah. All right. What have you learned from writing this book that you found worked really well for you?
I really enjoy writing descriptive scenes, and I have found that what things that I need to work on versus what worked really well for me was I like writing descriptive scenes and dialogue, but I'm terrible at plot. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I have a really hard time like seeing where it's like the middle section of the book is the hardest for me. I can get the ending, I can get the beginning. I even write the endings of my books first, and I'll go
Yeah.
back and write the first part and go through, but the middle I have a really hard time doing that. So what works well for me is the beginning and the ending. Dialogue, I can write dialogue all day long. I could probably write
Mm-hmm.
an entire book that's just dialogue, but all the plot inner workings, that's really hard for me. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing to know for the future, for any future books that you're working on. Um, and then I guess on the flip side of that, what things have you learned from this one that you found haven't worked well for you in term and that can you mentioned the middle section, but in the
Yeah.
plotting, but that can include things like publishing and just all the
Mhm.
whole process.
Yeah. I would probably say, well, I haven't done hardly any marketing for this book, and I know that's the one thing that authors hate doing.
Hmm.
But we all have to do it because if you're self-published, even if you're traditionally published to some extent, you have to be doing like all your marketing. And
Yeah.
for me, I don't have the time to do a ton of marketing, and I'm okay with that. Like I published a book, I reached my goal.
Hmm.
Um, but so that's one thing. Marketing, I'm like, that it's not my favorite thing, but I'm gonna work on that one. Two is probably in the editing process. I I do tense changes a lot.
Yeah.
So I like to write in third person, past tense. That's my favorite to write. I did not write this book in that. I wrote this in first person present tense because it was the
Hmm.
hardest thing for me to write. And I was like, let me
Yeah.
learn how to write the hardest thing for me to write. So I did that. So that was hard overall doing that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
It's good to challenge yourself though. And that's um I haven't talked much about my writing, but I have written something, and I'm not going to talk about it because it's not in a place where I can publish it or talk about it. But one of the things that I chose to do was write it all in third person omniscient, so very similar to like Lord of the Rings, except then I would do interludes and I would do those first person, and so I did that on purpose so that I could learn how to write the other way. And I think um, I don't know. I need to go through and edit it and everything and do a lot of work on it still. But I think that was a good challenge for me. And I can see how writing the thing that you're not good at would be uh, beneficial to you as a writer as well. And okay, so what have you learned since this one that you will change in the future? Kind of similar to what you just talked about.
Probably in the draft excuse me, in the drafting process, I do not outline like hardly at all.
Hmm.
It is all very what they call by the seat of your pants or a discovery
Hmm.
writer. So
Yeah.
you write the first chapter, you're not sure what the second chapter is going to be, but you write it anyway. And then the whole book is like that. That's what this one
Hmm.
was mostly. It was entirely vibes, entirely going on Pinterest and looking, oh, those are cool. I could write a story about that.
Yeah.
Or a location, or I don't know. So Yeah, it was mostly that, and I would say what I would change in the future is probably do a little bit more structure in how I write. I don't like a lot of structure because I feel
Yeah.
like it takes the creativity away. So I
Hmm.
would, but just for sake of, since I struggle with connecting that middle part of the plot to the first and the ending part, to just maybe have a little more structure in there for the next one.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe now's a good time to ask, what's your book about?
So this is like the one question all authors hate hate responding to. They're like, just read
Uh-huh.
the blurb. But it's yeah. So it's about a it's a dual point of view. So there's two main characters. Briar Verlies, she lives in Homer, Alaska. That's where I set this story. And her life is very cozy. She drinks tea and reads and annotates books. And there was something that happened to her when she was younger, and it is starting to resurface. I won't say what it was because that will spoil some things. But it's a fantasy, so it starts off contemporary, completely normal, modern day,
Hmm.
and then it continually descends into more and more. I won't say chaos, but you'll understand when you read it. That's a very broad description, but I can, if you want, I can read the
Yeah, go for it.
back of it. Okay, so I have the first part is she's ready to turn a new page, and he doesn't want the story to be over. When Briar Verlies finds out her favorite bookstore in Homer, Alaska, is on the verge of closing, she jumps at the opportunity to save it. But her high school crush and former classmates are back in town, making her plans a lot more difficult. When an array of riddles comes into her possession, they trigger a memory from a time she disappeared without a trace. While digging into the clues, Briar discovers the reason for her disappearance might stray into the realm of fiction and magic. Peter West, dreaming of becoming a successful escape room artist, is striving to build a career from crafting unique puzzles. When he gets the offer of a lifetime, he sets out to create an escape room worthy of his small town. But when riddles Peter never devised begin to surface before construction on the attraction even begins, so does a wild secret, one that demands the escape room be built as soon as possible. Unexpectedly reunited with the girl who's held his heart since high school, Peter's reality is shattered when the bookstore becomes a literal place of escape. Can they unravel the mysteries before life as they know it comes to an end? So it
Okay.
is very, uh, if you like fantasy and you like cozy, these are all the things in one.
Hmm. Yeah. So what made you choose to set it in Homer?
So there's a bookstore in Homer that I love going to. Every time I go, I always stop in there or try to. And it is, I won't say exactly which one it is, but because I want you to figure it out if you go to Homer, because there's multiple bookstores there. Uh,
Mhm.
but it is it's a maze of books, and there's books that in there that are hundreds and hundreds of years old. And it's just when I step in there, I'm like, I just have to write a story about this place. It's just so cool. So
Mhm.
um, yeah, I was like, I'm gonna write a story about this. I don't know when, and then this one just kind of evolved into being that.
So does the bookstore know that you wrote a book about them yet?
Not yet. I'm actually
Okay.
going at some point to bring them a free copy and tell them that I have done that. So that some poor soul, when they wander into the bookstore, will find my book and there and will look at it and read it and be like, this is about this bookstore.
Mhm. All right. And why did you choose to? So bookstores, that's pretty obvious. You're a writer. You're a reader. Um, why did you choose to also go with escape rooms, though?
That I have done one escape room in my life, and it was a homemade one with a friend for a friend's party, and her dad did a wonderful job of making it feel like you're in a different place.
Hmm.
And we just had so much fun doing it. And from then on, I was like, I really like escape rooms. I like puzzles. I like figuring out clues. And I have never read a book with an escape room in it. And I was like, why has no one written one that I have read? So I was like, I'm going to put one in it because that's just something different and unique. So that's kind of what I did, combined all those things.
And from what I understand, it kind of helps with the plot of the story. Kind of fits right in neatly there.
Yes.
Cool. Do we want to mention the giveaway right now?
Oh, yeah, sure. So if you're watching this live and you comment on the live, I will put your names in a giveaway wheel. And after the live is over, I'll spin it. And whoever's name pops up, we will reach out to you and I will send you a free signed paperback copy of this book. I think I've only done one giveaway. So this will be the second one I've ever given out.
Cool. All right. So make sure that if you want a copy of this book, that you drop it in the comments and let us know, and we will make sure that you get entered for that. All right. So then a little bit more about the writing process. What is your process like? What is your writing process like? How does it fit into your daily schedule? What is all the details about that?
So my writing process is, depending on the deadline that I give myself, it is not very structured, but I do make a word count goal for the day. So before I actually start writing, I will get a story idea and I will sit on it for a while and just gather bits and pieces till I'm like, okay, this could make a story. And I have a notebook where I write down scenes that I want to happen in the book. So in no particular order, just I want this to happen. I want this to happen. I want this to happen. And I will just have that in my notebook. That is like the extent of my outlining. It's just that. And then I will write a first chapter, like set up the first chapter, and I will write the opening line of the first chapter. Sometimes I have to rewrite it a few times. And from there, that kind of sets the feel for the whole story. And I will make a word count for the day, and I will try to reach that word count. And I will have a monthly word count as well. So I'll say, okay, if I don't reach, if I don't write 500 words today, I can write 2,000 tomorrow to reach my monthly goal or whatever. So some ideas, word count, and I will actually even set up my document. Okay, this book is going to have 30 chapters. I'm going to write the whole book in 30 chapters. And then each chapter doesn't really matter to me how long they are because I like long chapters. So I have long chapters and some of them are short. So that is the overall first part of the process that happens. I write the whole book, however long it takes me. And then I don't do alpha readers, really.
Yeah.
After I read it, I will do some of my own editing. Then I will find an editor to edit. I will do some beta readers after that, but at least for this one. And then I will do the last bit of edits and submit it for publishing. I guess you could say this isn't my typical writing process because this is a book that I self-published. I had it on Substack first. So I guess you could say those were my alpha readers. So that was unedited. That was unedited. I put my chapters up there. I did like a brief little spelling check of my words and then put it up there. Like I didn't do anything. I was just writing it. So I guess I have two writing processes. If I wasn't putting it on Substack, what I listed first would be my process. If I am putting it on Substack, I am writing the chapter, then I am doing a brief edit and putting it up there for people to read. So they're technically my alpha readers. At a certain point, I will take it off Substack and edit it, send it to an editor, get it back, and then publish it in book form. So that is pretty much the gist of it.
Do you find that you were able to get any feedback or especially useful feedback from the Substack readers for your edits and everything?
Yes. So I forgot how many I had at the time of this one. I was writing this one. I wrote the whole thing on there. It was up there. I guess technically people could have stolen it, but I was like, I wasn't planning to publish it. It was just for fun. So I had it up there, and I had mentioned like, okay, I'm just gonna leave it up there, and people were like, we really want this in a book form. And I was like, oh, okay. So I asked, I was like, well, what do you want me to change about it, And I had gotten feedback that they said they really liked the pacing, that the descriptions were not too much, and there was good
Mhm.
dialogue and that, but that I could work on spacing that out. Like, you know, you can have too much description chunks and then a bunch of
Yeah.
dialogue and then more description chunks. Like, I needed to piece it out more, so I did
Yeah.
that. So I pieced it out
Okay.
more after I took it off, and then it is what it is now. So there was some helpful there, but also it was inspiring to know that people were reading the book and liking it and
Mhm.
wanted to buy it, like, in a book form. So
Yeah.
there was helpful feedback there.
That's good. Um, so for your editing process, do you just look through, just read it, and when you find things that you don't like, you change them, or do you, um, uh, I guess, what does your editing process look like?
So how I edit is I will write the whole book. I do very minuscule little edits per chapters. Like, I'll go back and read things and be like, that doesn't make sense. What, I wrote that at 1 in the morning, like, and go
Mhm.
fix that.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'll write the whole book and I'll go back through and do a very brief, like, point of view edit. So I'll read
Mhm.
just one person's point of view and then I'll read the other person's point of view to just see how they're responding to things, like if it fits their character, like would they actually do this? Then I will go and find an editor that I think would be a good fit for the story, and she will make her. I more do developmental edits, so like the
Yeah.
overall manuscript, and
Mhm.
then
Yeah.
uh, some little things, but it's mostly developmental edits. I do most of my line editing, and then after that, I will go back and fix what they did, or not fix if I don't agree with what
Mhm.
they're saying to
Yeah.
change. And after that, I'll do one more read through of the PDF. Then I will order a proof copy of the book, and then I will do an actual where I sit down and pretend to be a reader and look for anything that's like distracting. And I will
Yeah.
have a highlighter and annotate it and just go through and fix all that. Then I'll take that and apply those fixes, and that's my final draft.
Mhm. Okay. Um, so when you ask for beta readers, what is your beta reading process like? What do you look for when what do you ask beta readers to look for specifically?
So I have, since I didn't do beta readers with this one, I have done beta
Mhm.
readers before with the
Mhm.
first book of my Arthurian.
Yeah.
I I reached out on my Instagram because a lot of the people that follow me on there are reading the same genre that I am kind of
Mhm.
putting out. So I wanted
Yeah.
people who, you know, are expecting what they're expecting this genre, that, they're already there. I already have my readers there. So I'll reach out to them and I will ask them for things like, does this make sense? Because it's,
Mhm.
it's just still in the drafting process, or
Yeah.
most it's drafted, but uh are there things that this character is doing that, you know, is dumb?
Mhm.
Like, you've read books where
Yeah.
the main character
Yeah.
does something, you're like, that why would you do that? Stuff like
It
that.
doesn't make sense with their character or anything. Yeah. I
Yeah,
understand.
or is it something that's cliche that everyone else is doing, so you're just doing it? Like, I don't wanna do that.
Yeah.
I wanna so,
And
point that out to
or
me.
is it something that they're doing because it's cliche, and so you're doing the exact opposite just because it's cliche or
Yeah,
something like that?
like,
Yeah.
I want it to be natural, like, it's
Mhm.
the logical thing to do, or if it's not logical, it makes sense with the story because,
Yeah.
a character is insane or whatnot.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, broad things like that, and then I'll even they don't have to, but I'll be like, "If there's any spelling errors, that would be great," because
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, those are hard to catch, and even, I mean, you'll find them in traditionally published books too.
Oh, yeah.
They're not even rare in traditionally published books. You find them. I
Yeah.
found several in the Sandersons, and I mean, he's got a process and he knows his process and he's done it over and over again. And I found
Yeah.
it in other books that are traditionally published. And um, I I I've read enough self-published work now that my I read it for the story. I don't read it for
Mhm.
how things are written, how it's spelled. If there's little mistakes like that, I can forgive them because
Yeah.
I'm reading it for the story. And that's the
Mhm.
same thing. Like, I've talked about this with TV shows where or movies or adaptations or whatever, if the story is good, I can forgive it not being a faithful adaptation. And so for me, everything about a book or a movie or a TV show is the story good. And then obviously, is there stuff in that good story that is not benefiting the story, that's just completely worthless, that is inappropriate, that doesn't need to exist, to tell the story better. And so that's what I end up looking for when I'm reading stories or consuming stories in whatever manner it might be.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you find, or where do you get inspiration
Oh,
for this book or for any book?
I get inspiration from a lot of things. Music. I'm a musician too, so
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of music, and music is probably one of the number one things that inspire a lot of books. Two, I have very vivid dreams. They're weird, but some of them actually turn into be books. Like my Arthurian was entirely a dream, the whole plot for the first book. So that was interesting. So that was inspiring in some manner. The weather, if it's raining outside, that's kind of where this inspired this book. If you've ever been to Homer, it's raining a lot.
Yeah.
So that's and then like most writers, I think I use Pinterest a little bit because there's lots of pretty pictures
Yeah.
on there. You know, you can create a mood board, as they call it, just help inspire you, because
Yeah.
we all I think a lot of authors secretly want their book to be a movie, but they also don't want it to be ruined. So like
Yeah.
Pinterest is like the next best thing.
Just find the thing that's specific to what you want for your story. Yeah.
Yes.
And are there any specific things I mean, you mentioned that the bookstore in Homer is one that you absolutely loved. You mentioned that you did one escape room and that you've loved it and you've never seen anything like that in a book before. Are there any other very specific things that influence this story?
Tea. I will it's not a spoiler, but there is tea magic in the book.
Mm-hmm.
A little hint of it. Book 2, you might see some more of that. So tea, I really enjoyed tea. I love real chai tea, not like the fake stash brand of chai tea or whatever whatever chai tea that you get at the store, but like real chai tea. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, that's hot drinks, just like to C.S. Lewis. I think they're inspiring. Can never
Yeah.
have a cup of tea or a book long enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what has okay, so this is technically your debut book. This is
Mhm.
the first novel that you've ever released and sold to the public. But I know that you've written other stuff in the past. So what has your writing journey looked like over the years?
So I distinctly remember when I was 10 years old telling one of my dad's friends that I wanted to be an author when I grew up and I was going to write books. And, you know, when you're a kid, people don't really take what you say very
Mhm.
seriously and they kind of laugh at
Yeah.
you. Like, and I was just like, I'm gonna write a book. So I kind of took that, and I think from there, my cousin and I, we kind of played around writing stories. I think a lot of young writers start 10
Mhm.
or 7 to 10 and start there. So I filled notebooks full of just random stories that I pretty sure I have burned one because I did not. It was never going to see the light of day. um,
Uh-huh.
and then from there, I remember I was like, I really want this to be a reality. Like, I want to write books. Like, I love to read, and I think it's so
Mhm.
cool that you can make a world from just words and people can see it, and that's really, really, really cool. So I knew I wanted to do that. So I told my cousin we should have a competition to see who can write the most words in a year, or just, see who can write the most words. So we would
Mhm.
compete and update each other on our word counts. And it wasn't like a competition in that, oh, I'm better than you if I can write more. It was more just for our own, being able to write a full length book.
Mhm.
We are competing for that goal collectively. So
Yeah.
I think I ended up at 16, I ended up writing like a 200,000 word manuscript, and I was so proud of that thing, but
Uh-huh.
it is trash. It
Yeah.
is still on my computer, and I remember being like, "I'm gonna publish this into, like, 7 books," but no, that's not gonna happen. But I'm so glad I did write that because I learned so much about story structure and dialogue and just descriptions and all that, and there are parts of
Yeah.
it actually I will confess that there are parts of it that I do still really like, but most of it doesn't make sense. So that's kinda where my journey started, and then I found Enclave Publishing Books.
Mm-hmm.
I know, AEA has shared some of their stuff, and you guys have read and reviewed some of their
Yeah.
stuff. Uh, Around 16, I think, is when I started reading their stuff, and I heard about realm makers and just, oh, there's like a whole community of people who like to write the stuff I do and encourage each other and learning how to write well, not just writing a book to, you know, write the book, but like to write a really good book. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Oh, that's what I wanna do. I don't wanna write something that's just, you know, self-published books that's on the shelf, doesn't have a great cover, no
Yeah.
one's ever gonna read it except maybe your family." Like, I wanted to write a book that people would enjoy. So, I started listening to authors who were published through Enclave. I got an Instagram because that's where all the authors hang out,
Yeah.
and just started learning from them, and then all of that collectively has led me to where I am now.
Yeah. So who are some of your favorite authors?
Favorite authors? Well, I I don't think I could leave this channel alive without saying like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis are I think did inspire this book and many others just because they write fantasy or fiction, and
Yeah.
I did enjoy it and have fond memories of being read to by my parents and other family members those books and just escaping to that world, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
really enjoying that. So I like their books. I read Nadine Brandis's books, and
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy her writing style. Jill Williamson's books, her Blood of Kings trilogy was really good. It was good enough that my brother even read it, and that's saying
Wow.
something. So I think I even got
Mm.
my cousin to read it too. And then of course Jonathan Renshaw's Dawn of Wonder. I have to mention that one because that one's a favorite.
So Dawn of Wonder, I read because Callie forced me to.
Mhm.
Um, which, if somebody forces you to read something, that isn't necessarily a bad thing because you can find some of your favorite books that way. So
Mhm.
um, don't allow yourself to be pushed away from a book just because somebody else is telling you have to read it.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So we talked about your favorite authors. Now, what are some of your favorite stories? And this can be books or movies or TV shows or
Mhm.
just whatever. What are some of the stories that you have consumed that have really made an impact on you and that you really um, just enjoy all the time?
I should have mentioned this as a favorite author, but I really enjoyed Lucy Maud Montgomery's books. Her Anne of Green Gables series, all the books, and then
Hmm.
her it's not I wouldn't say it's a spin-off series, but it's like about the kids that are in Avonlea while Anne is away at college. So it's like happening during the
Hmm.
same time. I think I it's a thick book. It's like The Story Girl and the Golden Road, I think were my number one favorites of hers. I think I read that like 8 times in middle school and high school. Like I just kept checking it out from the library every time I went. I just loved it. I loved her
Hmm.
writing, her atmospheric writing, and I was like, "I wanna write like this."
Hmm.
So, the favorite stories I liked it was called The Story Girl. So,
Yeah.
it was a story about a girl who told stories,
Yeah.
and there's tons of little interesting stories within the story. So, you're, like, really immersed. It's
Yeah.
like a dream within a dream kinda
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah. That's a trope that I find elevates any book is when there's a storyteller within the story telling the stories, and especially when they are influential, when they have these strong themes. Sanderson uses it. Uh, oh, I mean, Tolkien uses it all the time.
Mhm.
All his poetry is all storytelling it's in-world storytelling. Um, and there's just so many authors that do that type of thing where they bring in a specific storyteller character, a bard or something that is just there to tell a story and to uh, support the character in some way, to push them, to challenge them, um, give them the skills that they need, and or reveal to them that they have the skills that they need, or something like that. And I feel like that's one of those tropes that I don't necessarily list it as like one of my favorite tropes, but pretty much I don't think I've ever seen a story where it does not elevate the story to have that in it. So
Yeah. I've noticed that if a story has
mhm.
a character, or it's just a collective agreement among characters that there are these other stories that make up the world, it does add a lot of depth to
Yeah.
that realm. Like, if you've read Dawn of Wonder, there's all
Mhm.
the mystery and mysteriousness about the world. It's like a story within a story, and you feel like you're there, and this world is so vast. It really does elevate it.
Yeah. That's one of the things for about Lord of the Rings that always gets me, because Lord of the Rings, the 3 volumes, is roughly 1,000 pages, and so if you include the Hobbit, you have basically 1,200 pages worth of fantasy. Um, and in those 1,200 pages, there is more lore, more world building than in any other story that I. Okay, maybe not than in any other story ever,
Mhm.
but the amount that is included in just that 1,200 pages, which is not gigantic for a
Mhm.
fantasy for a fantasy series, but even for a fantasy book. Sanderson writes over 1,000 page books every single time. There's multiple of the Wheel of Time books that are 900 plus pages, and so 1,200 pages really isn't that much in the grand
Mhm.
scheme of fantasy. But the amount that Tolkien was able to fit into that, and yeah, the of course the Silmarillion goes and expounds upon it all, and Unfinished Tales and all those other supplementary works. But if you just look at the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, there's more there than in just about any other story, even ones that have significantly more higher page count. And it's all due to the fact that he included stories, he included poems, he just made these passing mentions to Erendil and or Baron and Luthien, and just says, "Yeah, I'm not gonna tell this story because it's too long," or whatever it might be. Or they talk about how they just first start talking about this story, and then um, he basically goes black screen until we can come back and have another interesting moment. Sometimes he'll tell the entire poem, and I like that too. But that's just that to me is impressive in his ability to do that with such a limited page count while still telling one of the um, objectively greatest fantasy stories ever made. And that's yeah, it's just cool. I don't know. Anyways, um,
It's okay. You can talk about Lord of the Rings. I don't mind.
oh yeah, I know, but this isn't about Lord of the Rings. This is about what if we met at a bookstore. So, where did you get your title from? What inspired
I
you to use that title?
I think I was in the bookstore at the time when I came up with it, and I think I was just like in my head, like thinking of ideas. I was like, what if this happened? What if this happened? And then I was
Mhm,
like putting, I'm in a bookstore. What if we met oh, that kind of sounds like that sounds like a title. I've never heard
mhm,
a title like that.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I was in the bookstore when I came up with the title. So
When you started writing this book, it wasn't intended to be fantasy, correct?
that is correct. It was one of my friends was trying to get me to write a rom-com. I was like, I don't know. I don't think I can write this. It's not
Mhm,
my favorite genre. I was like, but I do want to I want to work on character development because
mhm,
I don't know. It's hard. It is hard to get a character to for people to really like, because you want the character to do things that make sense so that people like them, but then you also want them to do things that I don't want to say don't make sense, but
Hmm.
you want to make them interesting while still
Yeah.
relatable. And I'm like, I want to get better at doing that. So maybe writing a rom com would help. And then I was like, you know what? I want to change this. I have to put fantasy in everything that I
Hmm.
write. I just can't help it. I don't know. I
Yeah.
think it's also, I'll admit this. It is a little bit of a crutch because if you have fantasy in there, things can happen that don't, you know, if you
Yeah.
can fudge it a little bit, like I write myself into corners a lot.
Yeah.
So there's that there. But I also truly do love doing it because
Hmm.
I think it in a way it is relatable and it's fun.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I'm not opposed to it because fantasy is my favorite genre, but I think that there's a very, I've talked about it before, but I think that fantasy is a very unique genre, or sci-fi can be the same thing. I kind of lump them into the
Mhm.
same thing. Um, in that there's stories that can only be told in sci-fi or fantasy,
Mhm.
but every other type of story that's told in rom-com, that's told in horror, that's told in whatever other type of story you want to tell, can also be told in fantasy. So
Mhm.
basically, there's stories that can be told in fantasy that can't be told anywhere else, but there's no other stories anywhere else that can't be told with fantasy. And
Yeah.
so fantasy, it has a distinct advantage because you can use magic, you can explain things with magic. Um, you can ride dragons. That doesn't, I mean,
Yeah,
sure,
who wouldn't wanna do that?
there's we're not getting it into the reality of dragons, but I do believe that they were real at one point in
Mhm.
time in our history.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
um, they're not the they're not around anymore, so we can't ride a fire breathing
That
flying
that
dragon
we
anymore.
know of, but yes.
Well, yeah, but because of that, you can tell a story about a dragon rider in fantasy and include all these other real world themes. I don't I don't like when things get political in
Mhm.
stories, when the story becomes about politics, especially when they're modern politics, modern issues.
Mhm.
That's not my favorite thing, and usually I will bounce off of a book. My enjoyment of a book will drop because of that. Um,
Mhm. I don't think most
but
people are reading a book for politics anyway, they wanna escape that, so
that's
bringing it
that's
in there
that's
is
the
just
whole, yeah.
yeah.
They're reading books because they want the story, not because they want the politics. And of course, themes play into stories and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And so, like, I have no problem including themes. That's I would say that if you don't have themes in your book, then you're not writing a story.
Mhm.
Um, you're writing. uh, yeah, you're. I don't know what you're writing, but it's
You're
not
writing
not a story.
popcorn.
Yeah, essentially, it's there's nothing there for you to learn from, to enjoy, to consume. It's just words on a page at that point,
Mhm.
and that's very different. And so themes are very important to stories, but I don't like politics in stories. Anyways, that's beside the point. What was I talking about? How fantasy with fantasy you can write
Mhm.
anything. Um, and so yeah, you can write a rom com that includes fantasy, and
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with that. And um, having your book develop to the point where you say, you know what, this would be better if there was a dragon in it.
Yeah.
Uh, most books would be better with a dragon in them, but um, yeah. Anyway, so that's, yeah, I understand.
Uh-huh.
Um, all right. What else have you worked on in terms of writing, or kind of also what do you have coming next?
Mhm.
Yeah, just kind of all those things.
I am currently writing book 2 because uh, the first book is written to be a standalone, so you can definitely read it as a standalone. I wanted all my books to be read as a standalone and that they stick with you and they stand on their own.
Hmm.
But the story can keep going. I don't think any story is finished, even though the book's over. Like, I
Yeah.
want there to be, oh, but what if this happened? So
Hmm.
I'm writing book 2, and I have people who are waiting for it. If you've read book 1, I'll mention this. If you've read book 1, I am releasing book 2 on Substack because why not? I released book 1, might as well release book 2 on there for free. So book 2 is on there. The first 3 chapters are live. For other things that I'm working on, I am working on a cozy dystopian. Sounds like those two things don't go together, but
They sure don't.
apparently it's a thing. So I'm trying it, or maybe
Yeah.
I'm making it. I don't know. Some people have said it's a thing. I've never read a cozy dystopian, but I'm trying to. So I'm writing that one, and you can add the title on Goodreads. It's called Our Hidden Threads. The real cover is not up yet, but it is on there. So if you want to read a cozy dystopian, that is hopefully coming in 2025, then that will be the update where to find it when it comes out. And then I had mentioned earlier my Arthurian trilogy. First 2 books are written. The third one is pretty much written. I just have some plot things to fix and then write the ending part of it. Yeah. I will try to pitch those, I think. But ultimately, I'm not going to be upset if no one wants them, because everyone, I've already heard it so many times. Just because people don't want your book doesn't mean it's a bad book, and that's so true. So if people don't want it, that's fine. I'll just self-publish it and have control over everything, which I'm okay with.
When you say pitch it, that means pitch it to a publisher, right?
Or query for an agent, or straight up to like a small press, or one that is like Enclave or Quill and Flame or something like that. So
okay. So you mentioned book 2. Does book 2 have a title?
Book 2 does have a title. It is called Stepping Through Realms. That might give you a little hint of the fantasy aspect of book 1. And then I'm planning this to be a trilogy.
Okay, that was my next question. How many books are planned for this?
So I can give you the title for book 3. It's called, see if I word it correctly, because I had 3 working titles, but it's called While Drinking Tea is the third one. So I had mentioned tea magic.
Magic,
yeah.
Okay, so that's a what's that called? A reveal.
Yeah.
First look at book 3. So very interesting.
I'll give it away now, but if you combine all the titles together, what if we met in a bookstore, stepping through realms while drinking tea? Kind of creates a little questions there.
Story of its own. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. What else have we got here? What were your goals with writing this book? I guess you already kind of talked about that a little bit with wanting to practice using a different writing style. What else?
I wanted to learn how to write in first person present tense, because that was really hard. So I do that, and it's a lot easier to write now. It's a lot more natural. Once you write 100 and something thousand words, then it gets a lot easier. I wanted to learn how the self-publishing process works, which I may have mentioned that, but just learn, getting your own editor, getting a cover designer, learning how to work technology so you can submit files and get proof copies and order books and all that. And my one goal was to have my books in actual bookstores, and that is actually a reality now. So that's really cool. So that was my goal with this book, was to just have a book in the bookstore and go and sign copies, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
But those are my main goals. And then I think if we're looking ahead for the future, the next goals are to get audiobooks done.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
Format for that one. So I do have a narrator picked out for the trilogy. The trilogy, the Breezewood Chapters is the series name. Haven't pulled the trigger on it yet, but I'm hoping to crowdfund or Kickstarter, whatever, for the whole trilogy to do audiobooks. So we'll see when that happens. But
okay, before I ask my next couple of questions. If there's any, if the audience wants to know anything or has any questions, please feel free to ask, and we will make sure that we get to those as well. All right. So do you have any advice that you would like to give to other authors, other maybe young authors or people who are just want to know something more about the writing, about writing and how to do that?
I would say one of the best pieces of advice that I got was to write what you want to write. Don't write what you think other people are going to want to read. Don't write
Hmm.
what's popular right now. Like
Yeah.
most of the time it's not great. um, write what you want to read. Write the
Yeah.
book that you want to read that's not on the shelf yet, because you'll
Hmm.
enjoy it so much more. You'll be excited to come and sit down and actually write it,
Yeah.
and it'll just be a lot smoother of a process for you doing that. So that's kind of what this book was doing that.
Hmm.
Uh, Another piece of advice was don't worry about how everyone else is writing their books. Everyone has
Yeah.
a different writing process. There's no one right way to write it. I remember
Yeah.
getting so distracted thinking, "Oh, I don't outline my books. I wonder if I outline my books, I'd probably write so much faster. I'd probably write more." No. Sometimes
Hmm.
outline just does not work for you, and that's
Yeah.
okay. Like,
Yeah.
so don't get distracted with that. Just go sit at your computer or your notebook and just write it.
Yeah. Good advice. Do you have any, um, I mean, I think we can kind of guess the answer a little bit, but favorite genres specifically?
Well, I mean, I do like fiction, but I do enjoy some nonfiction as well, which I have a lot of favorite nonfiction books. Like, I don't know if you've ever read the Little Britches series. That's a really good series. Uh, I would say I like fantasy more than sci-fi. I know they can
Hmm.
kind of be lumped into the same genre to some extent, but I do like some sci-fi, but I definitely gravitate more to the fantasy because I am very much I do like Lord of the Rings and Narnia. Like those are kind of
Yeah.
European, swords and castles and stuff. Like I really
Yeah.
like that genre. So that comes out in my writing a lot. Uh,
Hmm.
and then I do like historical fiction. So I love history. And then I love knowing more than just what, you can read in a textbook and I like reading more details. So when you combine those two, you get I think you remember more details of history when you read it in a fictional context, like
Hmm.
trying to remember a series that's like really good. I think it's well, Francine Rivers wrote the Mark of the Lion trilogy, which was set, in Rome when they're, persecuting
Hmm.
people there and getting it's a fictional character, but you're able to experience the culture, which is a
Yeah.
lot harder to do if you're just reading it out of a textbook. Doesn't make as much sense, but then when you're in the person's head, it makes you remember details and you could even remember dates sometimes. I don't remember them, but you can
Hmm.
remember like, events that happen. So I would say I don't have like a number one favorite because I bounce between a lot. And I think that's
Yeah.
good. You shouldn't stick to one genre all the time. Like you should
Yeah.
branch out a little bit. So,
Yeah. I've so sci-fi for me has been one of those genres that for years I just completely ignored and said, this isn't for me.
mhm,
I don't like Star Trek, so it's not for me." And then you start actually reading some sci-fi and realize, oh, this is really good. There's a lot
mhm,
of really good sci-fi. And so that's the one that um, I struggled with. But no, I agree. Definitely
mhm,
read. If you think that you only have one genre, read outside your genre and see if you
mhm.
can find something else.
Yeah.
Because guaranteed that there is something in another genre. If you don't read fantasy, I can guarantee that there's something in fantasy that you will like.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, you can tell any story in fantasy.
Mhm.
So there are some that exist for you. I can guarantee that. Um, all right, so we're coming up on an hour here. So let me just ask this last question, and then if you have anything else that you want to share, um, for someone who has no idea who you are or has never heard of your books, and has obviously so many other books on their to be read lists,
Mhm.
why should they read your book?
You should read my book if you just want to curl up on the couch with some tea or coffee and you want to just escape into the real world, but with a fantasy twist. So you want it to be somewhat relatable, and you love books, you love rainy days, you like cats, you like, I don't know, secret messages and a little bit of romance. It's very subplot, but then you should read my book. I think you'll probably like it if you like those things.
Cool. All right. Okay, so where can we find your books then?
So my books are available pretty much everywhere online. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all the major retailers, even some random obscure ones because it's worldwide. So that's pretty cool. You can find me on Instagram, and I also have a Substack, which I mentioned earlier that you can find book 2 for free. I'll be releasing that. So if you read and enjoy book 1, then you can come right in and read book 2. So I'm mostly on Instagram and Substack, and I also do have a Threads. So.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming and talking to me about your book. This is, I haven't actually read it yet. I don't know if anybody was aware of that, but I haven't actually read it yet. I do plan to. I just don't know when I'll get to it. Like I said, I've got and people have lots of books on their TBRs, and I at the moment don't have a ton of time for physical reading, but I will get to it at some point because I want to, and I want to support my friend. So thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We'll see you guys again soon. Stay warm.